Although I am involved with CADAC, the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada, the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the participants and do not reflect those of CADAC. And now, cue the music.
This is the Impulsive Thinker Podcast, a show for high-achieving ADHD entrepreneurs. Together, we will inform and educate you about how to improve your self-awareness while developing systems, routines, and habits for conquering the entrepreneurial world. Here is your host, Andre Brisson.
Hey there, it's Andre here with another short for the Impulsive Thinker Podcast, the podcast for the high-achieving ADHD entrepreneur. This episode is brought to you by CADAC, the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada. You can get more information and you can donate at www.caddac.ca. This week, you heard Don Bard and I talking about being a bored entrepreneur, and it was the first discussion of two about becoming arsonists, and so we can put out our own fires. And what I wanted to do is just give you a quick retake of my experience with Jade Engineers, my first engineering company, and how I sabotaged that and destroyed that company because of my undiagnosed ADHD. So I'll explain it to you in the context of the ADHD brain. So the startup phase, I decided to start my own company. We were 6 months pregnant, just blew all of our savings on the renovations on the new place that we bought. So now it was very scary. I need to earn a living so I can feed my wife, I can make the mortgage payment, and feed my future child. In a way, it was scary. It was frightening. It was exciting, and there was always an urgency, and there's always a need to be novel and creative so I can get the next job, the next project, or just be. It was a very creative time for me, and that urgency was very uplifting and energizing. Okay, so during the startup phase, I was always seeing new opportunities, and I was able to jump on it. Got busier, hired staff, moved out of the basement into a closet downtown, and just saw more growth. With this, I had to develop systems and process and see how the group can work together and how my uniqueness as an engineer can be translated into other engineers that are not unique like me. They hired more people. We got more clients. It was all positive stress and positive fun. It was great. But then this weird transition happened. And I like this term because I'm calling it now the weird transition phase. I was starting to not being required to be around as much anymore. I was not really required anymore because the company was successful and it was steady. And with my undiagnosed ADHD, my ADHD brain didn't really like this. So this is talking from looking back. I didn't realize this at the time, but what happened was back then what I started to realize without knowing was that the staff also started to become dumber. They're making sillier mistakes. They're not doing things exactly how I would have done it, or all of a sudden I come up with new rules to them to follow. Even the clients were starting to get dumber as well. They're starting to become more demanding, and I'm using, these are all air quote terms here, more demanding. I started to believe I was seeing manipulations from all these customers, and I started to fire customers. I started to sabotage great big projects that I could put us on the map. Somehow I found a way to turn it into a negative experience. And then I started to get harder on the staff. I was starting to get harder on the clients. And I was moving from fire to fire. And I was fixing all the clusters created by big underline and big air quotes here by others. From that, I got approached by another company in the old industry I was in. And I decided to go with this partnership, even though my gut said no. My brain said yes. And because it was something new and challenging, it would have given me another direction. And my gut said no, but I said yes anyways. It was something new. And not knowing, it was my undiagnosed ADHD mind wanting and thriving and wanting, or needing, actually needing is a better term, of a new novelty, something more challenging and interesting. Even though I knew the culture that was there was not our culture, for some reason I convinced myself that changing a culture was doable by maintaining the same people. I think that's another short for another day, but anyways. A year and a half of very bad experiences, stresses with this new partnership. And then finally I had to leave or I was going to die, heart attack, or lose my family and friends. I was no longer fun to be around. And also it got to the point where I was no longer fun. I never found myself fun to be around either. I was not liking myself. So I moved on. From an ADHD lens, what happened? Well, what happened was undiagnosed ADHD took over. The weird transition stage was actually me being bored with the success that I achieved. It's everything I wanted, but it got boring. It was incremental growth. I got everything I wanted, a team, more time off, well, working less, maybe working 50 hours versus 80. But that was boring. It was no longer interesting. It was no longer challenging. It was no longer novel. And the urgency was gone because we're delivering many, many things on time and frequently. I'm going to put it in a short form here. Once it became successful, it was boring. And I was the arsonist. Okay. Now, as an entrepreneur, neurotypical or not, and neurodivergent, once we get bored, we become our own arsons. We create fires to put out because we always like to be active and moving. So I became an arsonist without realizing it. That's why I used air quotes before about others, how the staff started to get dumber, how the clients started to get dumber, how the manipulations were starting to appear are the most trustworthy clients I could ever have, and I lost. My ADHD brain needed something interesting, novel, and challenging, and was pushing it out. So in the startup phase, that was all positive experience stuff, positive ADHD strengths. Now, once my bored mind came into it, this all became negative, okay? I was unintentionally creating fires. My ADHD brain loved it, but it was pure negative experience. And you know what? I think at times our ADHD brain doesn't know the difference between a positive experience or negative, as long as the brain is engaging and getting that dopamine hit, no matter if it's a good urgency or a bad urgency, a good challenging or bad challenging. It's looking for the same thing every time. Good interesting, wasted time interesting. So I think this is where we have to be aware of our ADHD to understand, and at least to maybe check in and say, hey, stop, negative, positive, which way should I go? And then the other thing too is, like Dan Sullivan said, that a bored entrepreneur is a dangerous entrepreneur because they no longer see a future that's bigger and better. And at first I kind of disagreed because of my experience, because I had everything to do with my ADHD brain, but I don't think it's everything to do with my ADHD brain. My ADHD brain amplified it. But in reality, what happened was once my company was successful, it was doing well and no longer required me as much. And funny things, it was a goal of mine. But even though all those things happened, I could not see a future that was challenging, or that will be challenging, that will be novel, that will be interesting, and will create some urgency so I can have fun and enjoy myself. All I could see was steady, slow success with no challenges and no real urgencies. And I think my ADHD brain panicked on that and then started creating fires. So I hope this was helpful. This is what I kind of observed and realized. This is all stuff I didn't realize at the time. This is all stuff as I'm having this conversation with Dawn here this week, is that it all clicks in together. My dots are put together. So in this case, I couldn't see a future that was challenging, novel, interesting, and urgent. And that scared my ADHD brain, creating new stuff that was novel, challenging, and urgent, but it was all on the negative side. I hope this gave you an idea of clarity on the board, being a bored entrepreneur and how dangerous it can be. But now being aware of my ADHD, I'm now able to take a different look at it and to slow down and step it out. Let me know what you think about this episode. If you can email me at andre@andreb.ca, it would be greatly appreciated. And thanks again for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Impulsive Thinker podcast. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for the show, please visit theimpulsivethinker.com. The Impulsive Thinker podcast is produced by Tactical Breakthroughs and hosted by Andre Brisson. Remember, ADHD is only a part of you, not all of you.